Yo, what's shaking, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Orangebloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Jeff Ketchum, joined by Anwar Richardson and Alex Dunlap. We're talking about day 2 of Texas spring workouts. First practice was on Monday. Today was practice number 2 after taking a day off yesterday. So we thought we'd join the channel for about a half hour and talk about what we saw, what we didn't see, which in a lot of ways is more important, it seems like, or at least in the discussion of the last 2 days. Every bit as much as what's happening on the field. The off-the-field stuff talked about just as much. Again, do us a solid. Like this video. Hit that thumbs up button. Slam it if you will. Subscribe to the channel. We are creeping up on 15,000 subscribers. Get notifications. Share this thing on social media. And, oh, by the way, if you're not on orangebloods.com, scan that barcode right there and take advantage of the free promo over at Orangebloods right now. You get the entire next 30 days. An entire month. Use that promo code Texas30, and you can check out what the fuss is all about over at orangebloods.com. If you've never been on the site, you can do it on our dime. And if you don't like it, you can just leave. Free will, that kind of thing. Fellas, it's good to be back. We're kind of all in the same color palette as well. Maybe it makes us look more official. Alex, I'll come to you first today. You wrote your practice report. Both of you did. So both will kind of get the same first question. The thing that stood out to you the most today on the second day of practice was?
I don't know, man. I guess it was more just a overall kind of thing. I'm not sure that today was just shorts and helmets, so it was a little bit different in the structure than yesterday. But, as far as one particular thing that really stuck out to me, I'm not sure that, through we had 6 periods that we got to take in. One of them was, team stretch. So I'm not sure there's one real thing. I'm sorry. I should have known that was the first thing you were going to open with. And I should have thought about what was I feel like I had a lot of takeaways, but it's hard for me to. Maybe Anwar can answer, and I can have a minute to think.
I was going to say, that's it, folks. Thanks for joining the show. We'll see you next time.
Give us your input. We've got none. I've got a few that hit me immediately. I'll give you the biggest one because you asked for one. Okay?
Yeah.
So the biggest one, and I have more takeaways. From an overall perspective was the Malik Murphy situation that we obviously are having to monitor a little bit here because, Kedge, he wasn't even out there for the stretching portion of practice. And, that's as simple as simple can be. Somebody, a staff member kind of when was talking about Murphy, and someone asked him, hey, well, how is this, still a possibility that he's still dealing with an injury from high school? And the staff member said, no, that's a new injury. And it's like, I don't think you were supposed to say that. I don't think you're supposed to say that. So I think for me, Ketch, and I know there'll be other takeaways, but I'll just start with the easiest one. Not having your backup quarterback out there, missing reps. You and I kind of talked about it, I think, on Monday, Catch, that we didn't expect, Malik to poly practice this week. It just didn't make any logical sense that you're going to hold him out for one practice. So, but knowing that he's not practicing at all this week, knowing that he's probably going to need to really get healthy next week in order to kind of stay in line. But knowing that he does have a new ankle injury, and that's going to probably be something that's a hindrance for him in that battle. For me, that's probably still the biggest one. It won't be on Friday because at Friday, the newness of it would have worn off. And the only thing that would be shocking if he is practicing. Yeah. But outside of that, for now, the Malik thing for me has my attention.
Anwar, I would say that photo that you showed of Malik Murphy at practice today, somebody described it as really sad because he's just standing all by himself with about 20 or 30 yards between him and anybody else. Once it was said, I didn't think about it in that context immediately. I just thought about it as he's not contributing in practice. But once it was said, that's a sad looking photo. Now I've seen it a couple of times. It is a kind of a sad looking photo.
It is. It makes you. It's so funny. I had to check on Jason, in practice today. I'm like, dude, you all right? He goes, man, I just don't know what I'm gonna do because Jason Sukuma, he's such a huge Malik fan, and but it is sad because and I kept seeing comments on my tweet like, well, he'll do great at Utah. He'll rebound well at Utah. Like I keep seeing that, but it, something happened. There's been clearly a setback, and Arch is coming in, and you kind of want the guy to at least be able to compete for the job, and knowing that he's going to fall behind in that competition if this thing lingers, it is sad. And then just to see him just standing there, like that photo was a pretty sad one because everyone's on the other side. And he's just there, just trying to look and see what he can take in. The whole situation kind of, sucks for him because he's kind of the underdog as it is. And then this makes it even more of an underdog for him.
Alex, what I thought you were going to say versus what you said are two different things. Because I thought that the most interesting note of all of the notes from practice today was the return of Jonathan Brooks to the running back position, just because it was such a drastic change from day one, him not available at all because of rehabbing from hernia to being back in the mix. It changes the running back discussion literally from the discussion that we had yesterday. There's also somebody, I think C. Dunn over on the 40 Acres on Orangebloods, for those of you who aren't there. For those of you who are on Orangebloods, you probably recognize the poster named C. Dunn. He's like, you literally can't take Sarkisian at face value when it comes to injuries. That we're at a point now where if he says it's an old high school injury, you can't believe it. He could have mentioned on Monday that Jonathan Brooks was expected to be back later in the week. Doesn't really frame it that way. It's kind of Alex Beauty, you almost have to shrug your shoulders with the injury reporting, knowing that by the next practice, everybody in the program who's hurt, who knows what it'll look like the next day.
Yeah, that's interesting about Jay Brooks, because he did after stretch, he did go off and walk off with the hurt guys for a while. So I guess he came back. I don't know. I was really trying my best today to monitor because I got a really good impression of what the offensive depth chart is after day one, right? But with no team drills, no pursuit drills, nothing where we see these guys all lined up and everything. With the defense, I'm feeling a lot better about it now, from some of the context clues that I could get from individual drills today. So I spent my time mainly watching the defense. And so the whole thing about Jay Brooks, that's another thing where I don't have much to say about it because I was under the impression that he walked off the same way that he walked off to start practice yesterday. But then there were other guys that, I was on offense. I mean, there was the DeAndre Moore thing. He might have been over there at first too. And so maybe it was something where guys can, head off and sort of come back. So yeah, but certainly having Brooks back, that's a big deal. The one thing that I did notice out of the running backs is we were leaving because the defense is on the north side, right, and the offense is always down on the south side of the practice fields. And so as we're walking sort of south to get back to the exits, the highlight that I saw today was C.J. Baxter going against Anthony Hill on an option route, and that's two awesome young players that this team has. And dude, C.J. Baxter put him on skates, man. Like, that guy can get out there and he can catch for sure. And got a lot of separation on that play. Got his hands out away from his body, framed it so well, and got upfield. But yeah, getting Brooks back is obviously a big deal because other than that, with Keelan Robinson also being out, you had yesterday it was just Jaden Blue and C.J. Baxter and a bunch of walk-ons. So it's important to get him back. It was neat to see some extra work yesterday from what I did see from Baxter. I think he's going to be really good, but clearly Brooks is a major part of what this team's going to need to be doing offensively coming into 2023.
Alex, just to follow up your point on Hill, I realize in listening to you talk, I may be confusing what you reported versus what Anwar reported. I've just in the past couple of days, I've read so many different practice reports, I've forgotten who has written what. Correct me if I'm wrong. You did write today that Anthony Hill was running with the second team defense.
Well, he would be running with we didn't get to see any team drills, but
Right.
you can tell. It's like in the linebacker drills, the first two up are the same dudes every single time. It's always 41 and 33. So it's always Jalen Ford and always David Benda. And then yesterday, that was going to be, once I got a chance to think about it, that was sort of my biggest takeaway was that Anthony Hill with those inside linebackers now. He wears 0 now. It's always 0 at the Mike and 37 Maurice Blackwell at the Will, and that feels like it's just like every time those first two dudes go out, next two guys up, Hill and Blackwell. Whereas Hill was running with the third group yesterday, so it's already happening. There's a little bit of an abstention there. We talked about it, how it's not going to be anything with these freshmen coming in that they're going to just get bequeathed roles without having to earn them. Now. It is sort of interesting to think about, if that Will linebacker, inside linebacker spot is up for grabs. That's something that Maurice Blackwell's played. We've talked about it before. He's got the exact same background as DeMarvion Overshone, as a dude that's been like linebacker, safety. What is he? If you're looking for a guy that looks like Overshone, Blackwell looks a lot like that. Blackwell did have the 60 snaps last season. I think I was talking to Onwar about this last week. I think it was 58 snaps at linebacker, only 2 snaps at safety. So he's basically made the move to linebacker. So if Hill and Blackwell are going to be vying for that role that Benda is starting out this season playing, it's maybe there's a slight advantage to Blackwell that he's playing that role right now. I don't think that it's anything that they couldn't just, reverse engineer to be able to get Anthony Hill in there, because clearly Anthony Hill's probably the superior prospect, but he's moving up. Feels like Blackwell's in the mix, and that's going to be an interesting thing to monitor, because I think we all know that Benda probably on that defense is one of these guys that's kind of starting who he's going to have to dodge some bullets. Man, he's going to have to be like Neo in the Matrix, right? Just dodging the Anthony Hill and the Maurice Blackwell and everything else to be able to keep that starting job.
Onward, back to you just on the Jonathan Brooks thing, since that was part of your report today. Didn't mean to get them confused. Just your thoughts on, Brooks's availability is a big talking point, I think, for this spring. And certainly yesterday when we had the modcast talking about the running back position and how it might shape out if CJ Baxter continues by default to be really high up the depth chart. A return of Brooks certainly changes the dynamics of potentially the snaps in the immediate near future.
So first of all, Alex, I think you and I need to get together after practices and compare notes, so we are 100% on the same page. Because if you did walk off, I may have missed that portion of it. But knowing regardless, he was back, right? And regardless, he was participating in some form of fashion within practice, and you definitely did need that. I was talking to Jalen Ford after practice today, and just kind of asked him like, hey, you've dealt with, Bijan and Roshan, what does it look like, with these new running backs that you're having to deal with in practice? He praised Blue, actually. He really praised Jaden Blue as a guy who's quicker than he looks, a lot faster. And then, of course, he said some nice things about Jaden Blue, but Cedric Baxter. But really kind of praised, focused in a lot on Blue, and I had him give me a little bit more details as relates to that. But, to your point, I think, having him back, is obviously key. At the end of the day, it's one of those, like, coaches will always tell you, like, it's spring ball. So, you got to take that with a grain of salt. But he's a guy that needs as many reps as he can. Like, we've talked about this before, like when given the opportunity to play him in the Alamo Bowl, they went with Keelan Robinson. So, there's still probably some winning over of the staff that needs to occur as with Jonathan. So him being back out on the field, in whatever portions he was limited or whatever, then having the week to rest up, should probably be good for the future as far as the rest of him in camp.
Probably a question that I'll ask every time we are doing a live show after a practice to talk about practice. Anwar, what did you think of Arch Manning today? And you know what? As a tag along with that, because I don't want to fall into a hole where I'm not asking about the starting quarterback of this team. How did both quarterbacks look in the limited amount of practice that you saw today?
Well, as it relates to Arch, I think one of the things I described him as, he just looks like a very young but talented, quarterback. So there are times where you look and he's having to figure out, okay, oh, I'm supposed to be here. I'm on this side. Quinn's on this side. I'm supposed to be on this side. Okay, that's where we're throwing. Nothing egregious where he just doesn't, he looks out of place and you're just like, my God, no, but just like little things you notice, like as far as rhythm and flow of practice. Sometimes he makes some great throws. I think he had a really fantastic throw, kind of a laser one to A.D. Mitchell, on a pass today. And I said to myself that, damn, that looked pretty good. But there's sometimes there was little overthrows, but sometimes I've noticed, and Alex, you may chime in too, like sometimes I've noticed on some of his bad passes aren't always to guys that you expect to be within like the top 3 or 4 of guys who are playing. So I don't overreact to it too much because I see him connecting. I don't want to say, but the guys who will play the most, I'll be respectful. The guys who will play the most. So I thought, but I there's nothing about me when I saw Arch catch. I looked at him and say he doesn't look like a college quarterback. Looks like a college quarterback to me. So he passes the eyeball test as far as that is concerned. And Quinn, I think the good part about Quinn is, and what I'm about to say is kind of a compliment. You don't really notice him out there that much. And by what I mean about that is he's making the throws that need to be made. He's completing guys. He's hitting them in stride. Like he's making the deep passes. He's rolling out the pocket and hitting it. So there's nothing I look at. And it's, Arch, you notice it because you see the little mistakes. And so you focus a little bit more to keep watching him. Quinn, I haven't really noticed those kind of mistakes. It just seems to be flowing like he's the captain of the team. And so, he seems to be, in that regard, much improved.
Thoughts on that, Alex?
Yeah, I think Arch looks good. I mean, I know that A.D. Mitchell pass that you're talking about. I think that's the one. Is that the one? I think it was the one where he was that the one where he just stacked where he stacked Gavin Holmes and just got totally screwed Gavin Holmes up with his acceleration at the very beginning of the route on the deep route up the left side. That was a beautiful ball. I think Arch looks great. I think he looks. I mean, I can't. I don't know. I don't know why it's so weird to say, like, why people just get so angry at the fact he looks like he's out there competing for a starting job with Quinn Ewers. To me, it doesn't like I don't notice that much difference between the two quarterbacks. So that's what I say. I say that this is a quarterback battle, man. Like, people don't want to admit it. They think it's weird to admit. They say if we do that, we got to throw out Arch in Tuscaloosa, like yada yada. Like, it's, and I get it, but I'm just telling you, like, when you see it with your own two eyes, like, Onward, do you see that big a difference between Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning?
No, it's like, where you see the difference is when it goes from Manning down to the other quarterbacks. That's when you kind of know, it's different. It's no disrespect. So I'm agreeing with you to Alex, like, because someone would say, well, what's the fine line here, right? And that's what I'm saying. Like, so when it goes from that, and I know you guys are saying, like, you get what I'm saying, right?
Right. No. Right.
When we get past the second string and then other guys are throwing, that's when you notice a difference. But when you see those two throwing, they both are really good.
Yeah. You know what it is, Alex? It's really as simple as this. If you or I say that Arch is competing for the job, it's rocking the boat with the expectations that this team is going to compete and win a Big 12 championship. The dream can live if you believe that Quinn Ewers takes the big step this year from mediocre quarterback from a year ago to something much better than that. If the conversation around quarterback is if there's really a battle, deep down Texas fans know that this is another lost season, just probably with regards to winning a Big 12, simply because if you're playing a young quarterback, as I said repeatedly last year with Quinn, and I think the same rules apply with Arch, you have to go through the growing pains of what it means for a young quarterback to go through all those first on the fly.
I get that, but I mean, what I would say to people is I would say that all is not lost if Arch ends up playing. Like, Arch is good. He's good. So it's Texas has had quarterbacks come in and play as freshmen. I understand it's rocking the boat. Whatever. I don't care if I'm rocking the boat. I mean, I'm just telling you what I see. I'm telling you what I see. You know what I mean? It's like I don't understand. Here's the thing. It's a pretty leaky. It's a pretty damn leaky boat in the first place. If what you're building into it is something that you haven't seen, something that you're projecting, and that's that Quinn Ewers is going to take this massive leap between last season and this season. I understand it could happen. It's a little bit of a leap. It's this, in my opinion, or in my mind. Clearly, I don't need to preface it by saying it's my opinion, because that's what I'm here to talk about. In my mind, it's a similar leap to talk about a freshman coming in and playing great, leading his team to championship level play. You know, it's like we've seen Quinn, right? 2022 Quinn, we've seen that, right? But we need to see is what 2023 Quinn is. And as I look at these two players, I don't walk out there and just say, wow, man, Quinn's there's not much difference. So
the only difference, obviously, a couple of things, Alex, and I think you would agree to this. I think when you're talking like ability to throw the ball, it may not be noticeable. What we don't know and what the risk factor is playbook, which we assume a Manning would be able to pick up the playbook, and then of course facing pressure, from a college football team, and then the third thing too, Alex, is there just hasn't been enough stability at that quarterback position since Sam Ehlinger has left. They went from Hudson Card, then after Hudson Card get 2 games and he gets benched, and then it's back to Casey Thompson. Last year, because of injuries, you start off with Quinn, then it's Hudson, then it's back to Quinn. You know what I'm saying? And then now if you went like Quinn is starting off and then Arch. Now, how many starting quarterbacks are we talking about in Sarkisian's like tenure? You're talking about, would that be 4 or so? If you talk about Casey, Hudson, Quinn, and then Arch, that would be his 4th guy in 4 years. That's the only question. That'd be the only thing. My argument against it, and not a argument against you. Just start just in our conversation respectfully, is that you probably would like to get a guy that can at least play for 2 years before formulating any opinion. That's all. I just want to throw that in there.
Alex, I wanted to toss back to you just about a couple of other things that stood out today. And by the way, scan that barcode. If you're not on Orange Bloods, take advantage of that free offer that we're offering right now. 30 free days on Orange Bloods, promo code Texas30. I'm referencing a lot of the stuff from the practice reports that you'd have had hours ago if you were already on Orange Bloods, and go into, I think, a little bit more, a little bit of a deeper nuance, just because there's a lot of stuff that we won't get to today that just, for instance, Alex was talking about, I don't know that Jure Bledsoe's coming up in this conversation. I don't know if we're going to get into the defensive back talk. I do want to ask you real quickly, though. It stood out to me today, the Alfred Collins section, which was, I'll let you get into more detail in a second, but my main takeaway was that he was heavily involved with kind of the frontline guys, which is where he needs to be. And then I think the second thing that stood out to me was just a continued conversation of where we think Justice Finkley is going to be, at least where they're using him right now, and kind of when the pads come on, where it projects he'll continue to be.
Yeah, okay. So with Alfred Collins, I've just noticed with him, Alfred Collins has always been kind of this big, tall, kind of stoic and sort of quiet guy at practices. I've never seen him where he's out there yelling at guys, telling guys to come over here, just the kind of typical stuff that you see from the players who are like the senior leaders. There's a little bit of a void now with Morrow and with Coburn gone, right? Because you got Tavondre Sweat, who talks a lot, man, but you can ask Keandre Coburn, you can ask any of these guys. He's a big joker. He's a really affable guy. They all love him. But he's the guy out there on the practice field and in games that comes in there and kind of keeps it light with the rest of the guys. Byron Murphy just doesn't really he's all business, man. He's there to do straight business. There's a little bit of that void, and it feels like Alfred Collins has sort of stepped into it, where he's the one telling guys, get over here, get up doing this, slapping guys on the helmet and everything. And we're seeing, I think it's going to be Byron Murphy at the nose and probably Tavondre Sweat at the defensive tackle if we're just talking about the guys who are the pure starters. But as I wrote in my article, man, these pure starters play 40 to 45% of the time, and the backups play 40 to 40% of the time. Last year, Sweat, I think Sweat played more than Coburn. Ojimo played just as much as the guys who were technically starters. So it's Collins is gonna. It feels like even though it feels like Murphy and Sweat are technically the first men up, Collins is going to be right in there as a 40 to 50% snap participant. And there's also a thing too that during the walkthroughs earlier before practice even started, I just noticed when we were just waiting to go in that they had a heavy set out there for front seven stuff, like front seven walkthroughs. Like we said, they were just in helmets and shirts and helmets, right? So we didn't see anything full pads and stuff, but they had Sorrell on one edge, they had Collins on another edge, and then they had Sweat and Murphy in there. So I think in heavy packages, they're actually going to have him playing that strong side 4/maybe 5 technique, and then have as the guy that's sort of like the heavier sort of edge guy in the heavy sets, Baron Sorrell, which makes a lot of sense because those are the sets where you're expecting run plays to come. And if it's going to be Justice Finkley over on one of those sides, he's undersized. You're going to be worried about his ability to set the edge in those situations, which segues me into what you asked about with Justice Finkley. He's done working out with the strong side defensive end and the interior linebacker guys. He hasn't done it in 2 days. He's over there working out with the linebackers and the edge guys. He's over there with the Jamon Tapps, with the Ethan Burks, the Colton Vosiks of the world, the Jerry Bledsoes, those types of players. And when they get up in their drills, we haven't seen team drills except for, we did see a small bit of pursuit drills yesterday where Finkley was there with the first group, right? I think they did one pursuit drill with each of the units, right? So we could see him for just a flash, but it wasn't enough to where we could take it all in. It goes Finkley, Burke, Vosik. And that's just where he is now. He's not training really at both. So I think he's there. I think he's there to stay for now. I'm not sure that that'll continue. It just sure feels like you look at Ethan Burke and you look at Colton Vosik, and like I talked about, I know it's hard. It's easy to say because they're two Westlake guys. They kind of, similar sort of recruiting backgrounds and pedigrees. I get. Well, I guess Vosik is of a higher pedigree than Burke, right?
Yeah, by a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, but they look alike, and I couldn't believe it. When I looked at the roster, Burke is 6'6", Vosik 6'5" is where they're listed. You can tell they're probably about an inch different, but Burke is at 250. They list Vosik at 230, and to me that doesn't make any sense. Like, Burke does not look 50 pounds heavier than Vosik. Both those guys look really good. And I would say that, if Finkley does stay over there on that edge, it's going to be a deal where Burke and or Vosik are going to come in and play. I don't see this being a situation. This isn't a situation where they brought in a transfer who's a senior like an Ovi, or, an upperclassman like an Ovi, or a senior like Thornton, where they're just going to give them 680 snaps on the season. It really feels like that thing might be a bit of a rotation, because to me it feels real thin to go into this year with just Justice Finkley, who's had one season, what we talk about, like 128 snaps last year, not all that productive at those snaps, and playing at a different position, being your complete lockdown guy there, that for the last 2 years, besides the safeties, that edge guy has been the highest snap participant of really anybody besides the safeties, with all the rotations that the corners do. You get like Jalen Ford, Overshone, the safeties, and like the edge guy. So I'm not sure it's going to be like that this year with Finkley, but it certainly seems like that's where he's going to be to start. And that presents an opportunity, I think, for Vosik and for Ethan Burke.
Alex, one last question, then one last question for Onward, and we'll wrap this thing up. A little bit of math, and I hate to put you on the spot, but I think I may answer my question and just talking it out loud with you. With regards to snap counts for the season for the interior guys, Murphy, Collins, Sweat. If most of the linebackers, I think Ford and company played over 700 snaps last year. So when we talk about snap counts for the interior guys at 45%, we're talking about roughly between 350 and 400 snaps for the season.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just look. So last year, I'm trying to pull it up. Okay, so last year, Tavondre Sweat, 400 snaps. Let's see, Byron Murphy, 327. Keandre Coburn, 369. Morwood Jomo, 316. Those were the main. And then of course, what did Byron Murphy play? Byron Murphy played. Oh, I already said him, 327. Whereas, you get Jalen Ford, 695, DeMarvion, 653, the safeties, and even Ryan Watts. I didn't realize Ryan Watts didn't really get his stuff split off last. He played 678. But then you look at
Ovi. That's about 30 snaps a game. It's interesting to think about it. I think as small and local as possible, one game by one game, each of those guys in kind of their optimal worlds is around 30, 35 snaps, and they're constantly rotating those guys in.
I mean, dude, Keandre Coburn, Keandre Coburn last year, 26 snaps, 24, 35, 36, 28, 23, 32, 36, 34, 37, 26, and 32. That was Keandre Coburn's 2022 season.
It makes Collins really important. We talked so much about the first two guys, but Collins, if it all goes as planned, will be playing roughly the same 30 snaps a game. They'll just be rotated in. They'll be the second guys that rotate in.
Yep.
So who's the fourth guy?
It'll be Vernon Broughton. I mean, that's pretty clear to me. It'll be Broughton. But man, Sadir Mitchell looks really good. He's so big. It was funny. It was like 99 versus 99 earlier today because Keandre Coburn came out to practice and he had a helmet on and he was kind of walking through and working with them. And he was going up. He was doing the stuff with the I don't know what the exact. It's sort of like a long arm drill that they were doing where they were kind of getting their hand on the outside of the guy's shoulder, pressing off, and then doing the stuff where they bring their hips around, and it was Coburn working with Sadir Mitchell with that, and you just looked at it, you're like, oh my, you realize like Sadir Mitchell's a lot bigger than Keandre Coburn, as Keandre Coburn that just got back from the weighing 335 pounds at the NFL Combine. You got Sadir Mitchell out there that's probably 2-3 inches taller than him, 20-25 pounds heavier than him. I think he looks really good. I think that 53, what's his name, Aaron Bryant, he could end up doing some things. I think that he looks good and he looks kind of a little bit more involved than I would have expected coming into this period. So but yeah, I mean, Vernon Broughton for me for sure. And then somebody keeps asking in the chat, I should just answer. People keep asking who the blocking tight end is. That's very obviously Gunnar Helm. It's going to be Gunnar Helm this year. It was Gunnar Helm last year. If you look at the usage for the tight ends last year, Gunnar Helm lined up in line 42 or basically 43% of the time. Whereas, and that's generally how you consider your guys, they're, sort of like your key blocking tight ends. Jatavion was only 13% of the time. Juan Davis only 13% of the time. So Gunnar Helm is the guy who they prefer in line. That's your main blocking tight end.
Onward, just to wrap us up, I was looking at your full section of notes. I could have picked any one of them, whether it was about Watts at cornerback and the way he's looked, Terrence Brooks.
Should have.
So
dude,
Watts was pick that last note that you want to finish things off on from really it was like a stream of 20 different thoughts. The one you would end it with is what?
Alex, you would go with Ryan Watts. I mean, because he looks like a beast out there.
He's something else, man. Like I don't know. I don't remember him looking like that last year.
No. I had to ask somebody because I was like, because I looked and I was like, who the hell is that? And he's listed at 6'3", Alex. He almost looks 6'4" to me. I'll be quite honest with you. He looked like, and I asked around, and it looked like he's gained about 8 pounds of muscle, and he just looks like it could be a linebacker. I'm not going to lie. Like, he looked like a linebacker playing a cornerback position. He looked like a freak. Ryan Watts looks like a specimen. Like, yeah, it's hard to describe it, but I guess I am describing it. And Alex can go into more detail as well. He just looks, I mean, he's like a man-child out there.
Yeah, also, man, his back pedal, his T-step, he's so, like whenever they do the back pedal and they do the T-step drill, when they back pedal, T-step, and they come forward and run through a cone, you're just like, how fast did he sink his hips, change direction, and move forward at this opposite angle with just elite feet and quickness. It's like, that's a special type of dude. I'll be interested to see. It's clear that he's going to be the starting boundary corner, and he was last year. That field corner next to him, we won't have time to get into it today, but that feels like a battle we're going to need to watch, because if Jade, we know Jade Barron's, that's where he's practicing, sort of the leader of the pack over there with those dudes. At least I think that's how they're separating them. It's all that makes sense to me. Who's going to line up opposite Ryan Watts? Because there's an interesting discussion to be had there with what guys have played last year, what new guys and their skill sets look like for this year, whether or not Terrence Brooks even should be back on the field side again, even though he definitely started to look like a guy that could grow into a Ryan Watts type boundary corner. So those are all interesting things to follow and watch, and things we'll be following. But yeah, the headline clearly with it, I mean, Anwar and I hadn't talked about Ryan Watts. We hadn't talked about it. I think just anybody who'd been out there, been around those drills would have walked away saying, wow. I mean, like an alien could have landed, and never not known football. You said, which one of those guys look good? He'd be like, number 6 looks good. I think that's what we need to do.
Yeah, Catch, it may be time to give Torrey Becton some damn respect if this is the case, because those guys out there look like specimens. Like those guys.
Contract year for Watts. I mean, obviously he can come back. He's not into his last season per se, but a lot of these guys get to this point in their careers and they start thinking, this is my last year. And it really takes kind of a bad season to change their minds about that. He might be a guy that looks at this as, this is it for me. And it leads to a whole a level of seriousness, right? Watts now is no longer a young player. He's an upperclassman. And I think we may be seeing that with regards to his physical development. He ain't playing games anymore. He ain't sitting out reps in the weight room. He is trying to get his so he can get his. And if you want more discussion, if you want more nuance, if you want more notes, go over to orangebloods.com right now. Take advantage of that 30-day free trial. We've talked about as much as we can get into inside of 40 minutes, but the beat goes on, the reporting goes on. Again, the conversation goes on. Get free 30 days. Test it out. If you don't like it, no skin off your back. You can just cancel, but we offer it because we believe that once you get a little bit of the cookie crack, you will be addicted and you will let us be your drug dealers. That is a metaphor, by the way, just for the record, if any law enforcement is watching, talking about the reporting. For myself, Alex Dunlap, Anwar Richardson, do us a solid. Like the video, hit that thumbs up button before you go out of this chat, out of this watch. Subscribe to the channel. Again, we're so close to 15,000. If you haven't already subscribed, help us get there. Until
Friday.
I had to remember what day it was. For just a second, I thought it was Thursday, and I was going to say War Room tonight, but no, 24 hours to go. Drunk Uncle is tonight.
Yep.
Because it's Wednesday, so it's always going to be Drunk Uncle night here on the 40 Acres on the Orangebloods Texas Football Channel. You guys have a great rest of the day. We'll see you tonight with the Drunk Uncle. Anwar, anything to tease Drunk Uncle-wise?
We're definitely going to have a good Xavier Worthy discussion to lead off, and I've got a lot that I want to say as relates to Xavier. So if you want that to be a teaser, that will definitely be a teaser. I got a lot.
Hercules. I will be there for that myself as a spectator. That's like in 8 hours, 7 hours, something like that. Until then, you guys have a great rest of the day. We'll talk to you soon.